later. And I think we're recording, so I think we're good. Let me find.
I received a notice that you're recording in progress and had to approve it.
Okay. Can everyone see a slideshow?
Yes.
Okay. Ooh. So Q-fever in goats and the proper management and the negative consequences that come with Q-fever. So what is Q-fever? Q-fever is known as coccidiosis. The symptoms in goats include abortions, stillborns, small and weak kids, infertility, and low birth weights. Non-pregnant animals are almost always symptomatic. And once a doe has had Q-fever, she is immune to it and cannot get it again. In humans, the symptoms include high fever, feeling tired, chills or sweats, headache, muscle aches, cough, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and chest pains. I need to move my little box so I can see it. How is it spread? The most common way that Q fever is spread, both in animals and humans, is coming in contact with feces, urine, milk, and blood from the infected animal, breathing in dust that contains Q fever, because Q fever can settle into bedding and it can float through the air. So breathing in dust is one of the bigger factors of contracting it. Touching newborn animals with birthing fluids such as placenta, and drinking infected milk from an animal that is unpasteurized. So, and then there's a picture of fetuses that have been aborted due to Q fever. They're usually further along than other types of abortion storms. Not wanting to do that. There we go. How to prevent Q fever through management. So if you're assisting with animal births or cleaning birthing areas, if that's your job or if you're volunteering to do that, it is recommended to wear disposable gloves, they're arm length, goggles, disposable boots, and respiratory protection. Hosting an animal birthing exhibit, which is really, really popular and showed to be one of the biggest spreads of Q fever. You want to make sure that you have a washing station that is available. And if you don't have a washing station available, you want to make sure that you have at least 60% alcohol-based hand sanitizer available, and that the bedding is clean, and to prohibit eating and drinking in buildings. Bedding and having placentas and the just general birthing goo in the pens is not a good idea, because little kids can come in contact with it because they just want to touch everything. Posting signage in your barns that are holding the animals, this is extremely important. Some of the signage you should make sure that you post is warning that animals can make you sick, no eating or drinking, and that pregnant women should be cautious because it can be detrimental to both the mother and the baby. Why is Q fever worrisome? Acute Q fever has a death rate of 1 to 2%, which is significantly lower than chronic Q fever, which can have a death rate up to 65% and can take anywhere from 1 to 20 years to develop. Chronic Q fever tends to reoccur and keep coming back, whereas acute Q fever is typically a one and done type situation and isn't as severe. I included a graph of annual Q fever cases between the 2000 and 2017. The solid gray is Q fever before 2008. Purple is acute Q fever, and the little X's are chronic Q fever. So you can see chronic Q fever is slightly more prolific than acute Q fever. A lot of times to say acute. So the next slide. So why are outbreaks an issue? So major outbreaks can cause a major butterfly effect. It starts with losing kids and pregnancies that are crucial. Oh, I just saw Holly's comment. Are you saying this as in humans or goats? So that is for humans. With goats, it's typically they abort and they're done, or it runs their course. And with goats, antibiotics does not affect it, whereas in humans, antibiotics is the treatment. So in humans, it can take up to 20 years to develop the chronic Q-Fever symptoms. So it can linger for a very, very long time, which it's scary because even 1 to 20 years later, you don't know if you're done. You don't know if you have the chronic Q-Fever. And it can be scary for people who think that they're done and then it comes back 15 years later. So that's a big worry. Did I answer your question well enough? Oh, I just closed it. So I'm going to move on to back to the outbreaks. Message. Yes, I couldn't find anything that differentiated between acute and chronic in animals. Everything said that in animals, it is just the abortion storm and they are done. And then they are immune from it for the rest of their lives. They can't contract it again. So, oh, you're totally fine. Yeah, I'm trying to watch the chat as much as possible. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So back to outbreaks and why they're an issue. They can cause a butterfly effect with it starting to lose kids in pregnancies that are crucial for farmers to make a profit. If they lose a crop of 20 kids before they even are born, that can be a huge profit loss. People may be hospitalized in large numbers. This is not good for workforce, for transport, everything that involves movement and jobs. And then goats from certain farms can be euthanized and required, or can be required to be euthanized. In the graphic, you can see between 2007 and 2010 was the largest outbreak that occurred of Q fever, and over 50,000 goats had to be euthanized, and that was mandated by the government. 4,000 people were infected with Q fever, 749 of them were hospitalized, and 24 of them died. So that was a very, very big outbreak, and it lasted 3 years. So luckily there hasn't been one quite as big, but that was one of the biggest ones they have on record. And in 2011, they had another one that wasn't quite as big, but still pretty sizable, with 21 goat farms being infected at some level and 20 human infections. In the end, many people's lives were affected either directly through the disease or through the inflation that it can cause in goat products. Goat meat and goat milk are already extremely expensive. So having to euthanize 50,000 goats would just elevate prices of everything astronomically. Just like it would with euthanizing like avian influenza, when they have to go through and terminate an entire barn of chickens and laying hens. It's detrimental to the entire industry. Is there any questions? I know we've had a few. It's not a very long slideshow, but there's not a ton you can do without being repetitive. So if anybody has questions, feel free to unmute and ask them, or type them in the chat. Also, if anybody wants a copy of this slideshow, I am more than happy to email it to you if somebody wants to message me on Facebook and give me their email. There is no vaccine, and I don't believe they are working on it because it is not possible. Everything that I saw, it said that there was no vaccine and they had no plans to keep working on it because it just wasn't a realistic possibility. That was one thing that I saw over and over, was there is no vaccine for animals or people.
Is there a way to find out if you're exposed to this prior to kidding season, or is this only after the loss of the kids?
So the loss of the kids is really the only symptom in goats. It's not like um, I'm trying to think of a similar disease. There's not a lot of similar diseases to this. Um, there's chlamydia, but chlamydia is the same way that really one of the only symptoms is after the loss of the kids. It's hard because once the kids are lost, that's it. Um, there's not really a way to tell before the kids are lost. And the only way to know for sure that it is Q fever is to take either the fetuses or the placenta and send it off for testing. How prevalent is this across the US in dairy goat herds? That I'm not very sure, but I did have the graphic on, oh, that is resources, and it's going the wrong way. So I couldn't really find a graphic for specifically for goats for how prevalent it is, but I feel it's going to be more prevalent than a human stats, if that makes sense, because it is less likely to be transferred to humans than it is from animal to animal. It's harder to contract it. So I couldn't really find a good statistic on that. I did look, but it's just not something that's really out there. I may have missed this, but how can someone test for it in goats and humans? So you can test for it in people, I believe. I think if you go to the CDC, I'd have to double check that. There was a link to getting tested or testing information. I saw that when I was doing research. I could try to find that. And I could even add it into my slideshow. I didn't think about adding that in my slideshow, but I did see stuff about it was getting tested and that kind of stuff. On the American Goat Federation, which is where a lot of the information and the links came from, they talked about getting goats tested and where to send it and stuff like that. So that's a really good question. Is there any more questions or anything you want me to try to go more in depth about? This is really the first time I've ever researched Q fever, and I started this last night. So I do have my resources if anybody wants to look at that. Once a goat tests positive for it, will they always test positive for it, or will it go away? So I don't know if you can test a live animal. You might be able to, but I think it'd have to be a tissue sample. So I'm not sure about that. I'd have to look into that. That's a really good question. I didn't think about that because I'd only really thought about testing animals that had already died from it. So Marshall said you can test via blood samples. So I didn't know that. I hadn't seen anything about testing it via blood samples. So I'd have to, I'm going to stop screen sharing and see if I can actually find that because that's a really good question.